Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kirklees Podcast, episode 7. In today's episode, I'm looking for a new amplifier. We discuss Jazzmaster and Danlectro style guitars, and we also discuss efficient practice routines. Stick around, it's going to be a good one. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Kirklees Podcast, episode 7. I'm joined with my co-host, Mr. George Loveridge. How are you doing, George?
I'm good, James. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Has this week been a rock or a roll?
I would say rock, but kind of roll, but only because nothing's really happened. Right. I can't really update to say anything. Last week I'd looked at booking some tickets to see Extreme, and yeah, nothing's really happened. Just teaching one-to-one sessions, writing guitar advice techniques on gear news. So yeah, not a lot's happened this week. So it's not negative, but it's not positive either. We're in the middle. We're
going to have to come up with a sort of a middle ground. You know, yeah, rock, roll, what could be as middle...
A Rolling Stone or something.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you've got an idea for something that could be just kind of...
Yeah, until the summer hits when gigs start, I think then we'll have more tales as I get out gigging. I think I've got one in April. So we're getting nearer.
Very good.
What about you? Rock or roll or
yeah, it's been
in
a
the
rock.
Middle?
It's been a rock. As I said last week, I sort of had a bit of a quiet period last week. This week, I'm covering for some of the guys. So I'm teaching a lot more lessons than I normally do this week. But I've also I've gone down the Open G rabbit hole this week.
I saw in the Facebook group.
Yeah, so it wasn't just the Keith Richards thing. I've sort of gone down so Open G is where you tune all the strings on the guitar to a G.
Hang on, that's another podcast, surely.
It is, and we'll get there. But it all started, I was just trying to learn how to play Romeo and Juliet, Dire Straits.
Right.
Now, I've learned how to play it in standard tuning and spent ages on it.
Is it Capo 3?
Well, it is. It's Capo 5 in standard tuning. After I'd learned how to play it in standard tuning, what I always do as part of my learning process is I'll look at, I'll learn how to play something and then I'll go find a load of live clips and I'll try and play along with those just for the little nuance. And I'm glad that I did because I've got my capo on the 5th fret. And I'm looking at not for play ears. I'm like, his capo's on the 3rd fret. Oh dear. Anyway, he's in Open G. So I'm currently down that rabbit hole. But by doing so, I've unlocked the Pandora's box of Keith Richards playing the 5 strings tuned to Open G, and then I've even had a go at some of the sort of Delta Blues stuff, Robert Johnson, that kind of stuff. So I've been a busy boy this week, but I've just sort of been chasing my tail. So yeah, it's been a rock.
Whenever I go to Open G, it's always when the guitar needs a set of strings, so I don't have to worry about them snapping on the way up.
I've never done it. I've never really I've played quite a lot of Open E.
Yeah,
for the slide stuff because I was well into that for a time, but I've not.
I've got a bag of licks and riffs in Open G that come out whenever I change the guitar to Open G.
Maybe that's something we can look into in a future podcast. So,
sure.
What's on the set list for this week, George?
So our set list this week, our technical focus is guitar practice, how to practice the guitar, when to practice the guitar, but most importantly, how to do it effectively. We had some people in the Facebook group asking. Commenting on your techniques when you were learning.
I was doing the solo for Take It
Easy, the Eagles one. Yeah, so we'll look at that. What we do is guitar tutors, more importantly, guitarists, because we still want to learn songs, well, like you've been doing with the Dire Straits. From there, we're going neck deep. We have 2 slightly different guitars this week. We have a Jazzmaster and a Silvertone. So we'll be discussing the pickups. In week 1, we looked at which pickup is which, but these are 2 different types of pickups, so we'll look at those together. From there, we have our Tone Talk gear buying advice. Now, you're looking for a new amp, maybe?
I am looking for an amplifier,
which is news to me. I've seen on our little crib sheet down here, so we'll talk about that later and probably end up rambling on for hours.
Correct.
On the strength of last week's amp episode, and then we have Pick Our Brains. We have 2 questions from the Facebook group and the YouTube channel, which you've curated for us, so we'll go over that.
Yep.
And we'll conclude with our Riff of the Week. I'll quickly go over the shuffle.
Yeah,
which was a request, and you've got a riff which is as yet unknown.
Yeah, it's the I've thought about it now. We're going to have a look at "I'm a Believer" by the Monkees, the sort of like little bit of the intro lick and stuff to that. It's got a cool little it's almost like surf rock kind of thing.
Sweet.
But it's the organ bit adapted for guitar. So, and there'll be a lesson on the YouTube channel for that if anybody wants to learn it as well. It'll probably go out the week before this airs. So very good. Right then. So, how to practice guitar. When, how often, skills to refine, slowing tracks down, etc. So I think a good way to open this up, George, would be to, how do you practice? Let's talk about how we practice.
Okay, fair enough.
And then I think we should kind of bust a couple of myths around practice because I've got some thoughts, as I'm sure you can.
Okay,
imagine.
yeah, and I'm sure we'll disagree, but that's good. It's discussion. So, I mentioned the other week I've got some gigs coming up, a couple of scary weddings I've got to learn songs for. What I do, most of the time, you mentioned this a few weeks ago, sometimes you know the chord progression without looking it up. You just get a sense of where it's going, you can feel it. But I'll punch in XYZ song, followed by chords, and there'll be some website somewhere that's got the chords. It's an easy way out, folks. I'll hold my hands up to say I'm not perfect, and I will just look up the chords. I'll also listen to the song before, really get to know it. But when it comes to the chords, I'll just have a look on certain websites.
UltimateGuitar.com.
Yes, and unless you've got a lesson for it. If not, pull your finger out. I'll look for the chords, and I'll just sit and strum through it without the backing track. Just get a feel for it on my own. Like say, if it's that I'm a Believer. I've got G, C, D in various orders, various guises. Now, let's say I'm learning some lead stuff. Let's say it's Black Dog, Led Zeppelin sort of thing. I'll most of the time pick that up by ear, the riff, because I don't trust other people's tabs.
Yes.
Most of the time. Because there might be a semiquaver where you need a dotted eighth note or, all sorts of stuff.
They've just done it wrong.
Yeah,
They've
it's easy to do it wrong. It's interpretation as well.
Yeah.
There's some riffs where you can have an open E, but they might have put 7 on the E string, and you can adapt. But yeah, most of the time, I like to go through it on my own. Now, fortunately, I live with my gigging partner, because she's also my life partner. So we can practice together. But if it's just for my own playing, I'll do as much listening as possible. And I'll go through it on my own more without the track. But then I will use the track. Now, you'll get onto slowing stuff down in a moment. But I will use the track to scale it down. Because I'm doing Paint It Black with a lot of students at the minute, the Rolling Stones. And if you can play that, you'll know that the verse is just D minor to A7.
With a cap on.
The second fret. But then the effective chorusy bit is very choppy. It's 2 beats on each chord. Most players can play the verse perfectly because it's just 2 chords. That bit's a bit mouthier. So I'll have a student end up playing, and then I like to slow everything down, scale it down, make it this big. Then next week we might make it this big. We might bring it up as we go along.
So that's good, but I think what the person that had asked this question was looking into was like how. What does your routine look like? Like, do you have a routine? Do you have a set pattern?
Okay, fair enough. Not really, to be honest. We mentioned the other week, we both play guitar for a living, and it's a nice, rare opportunity when we can sit at home and tea doesn't need making or XYZ, and we can sit and play guitar for our own enjoyment. Let's go back to that idea. If I'm actively needing to practice something, I'll usually do it after I've done a big landmark thing, like I've washed up, for example.
That's a big
It's
landmark
interesting.
thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm not lazy or anything. But yeah, I've washed up, nothing else is happening. I can sit and play guitar, I can commit. But most of the time, I will literally go around the house, pick up a guitar, and I'll end up playing it for 10, 15 minutes. I'm only moving it, so I can put it in my gig bag or whatnot. But what about you? I must admit, I'm quite loose on a routine.
Yeah, so there's no perfect practice routine. There's no perfect one-size-fits-all. I can guarantee if I gave you an hour's worth of spider exercises with some pentatonic scales and some chord changes and muscle memory exercises, it would work. But it's a bit like the whole diet and exercise thing. You've got to find your little groove.
Yeah.
And once you find it,
that's it. It works.
It works.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of caveat this with there's no sort of set routine, there's no set way to do it as long as you are playing the guitar. But I think the first distinction you need to make is, are you practicing the guitar or are you playing the guitar?
Yeah, I have a student, we do a lot of blues work, and I'm sure he hasn't confessed this, but I'm sure, and I do this, I'm the same. Oh yeah, I practiced guitar for 2 hours on Saturday. No, I just played 2 hours of backing tracks. I can do that with my eyes shut. Was I practicing that fingerstyle piece for a wedding? No.
Yeah, so you've got to practice. There's playing, and then there's practicing in the actual sort of technician.
I think there's another step, procrastination as well.
Correct.
It comes into it.
Yeah. So looking on PMT's website, Anderton's website, their new deals. We all do it, but that's not going to make you a better guitar player. Now, it also depends on the phase in your life that you're at as well. You know, George is considerably younger than I am. And when I was in my early 20s, I used to play a lot more than I do now. But now I have a young family and all that kind of running a business, doing all that kind of stuff. Now, as a kid, my main practice time was between 4:30 and 5:30 after school because The Simpsons would be on TV and I would sit with an electric guitar waiting for tea to be cooked.
I'm working through stuff.
And I'd describe that as technical practice. And I'd get a good hour in pretty much every day because it was consistent. Because Monday to Friday, that's what I'd do. And I didn't know I was doing this at the time. I was just so enthralled with the guitar. It just had to be. I literally walked around the house with one around my neck all the time. As I got a little bit older, I went to college, went to university, and then that sort of became my higher education. That became my sort of day job, playing the guitar.
Yeah.
So I had a guitar on my knee for most of the time. Went off to university, 3 years of the same. Then when I started working full time, it sort of all fell off a cliff a little bit because you get busy, and I was in the early stages of Kirklees Guitar School trying to build that up, and I was working a day job at the same time. I then kind of got established into the point where I wasn't, because essentially I was working 2 jobs. I was trying to build the business
We've all been there.
and working in the business, but then I was also I was a fabricator. So I had sort of 50, 60 hours
You were on
a
the
week,
payroll.
a regular job. Yeah, I was actually like doing a proper job. Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of time to practice, and the little bits of practice that I were doing were either chasing gigs and learning things for gigs that I was doing on the weekends, or things for lesson materials. Then when Kirklees Guitar School opened and we started getting some traction, I got into this really nice little groove for about 18 months.
Right.
Where I would wake up an hour and a half before my partner, make a big pot of press of coffee, and I'd practice for an hour before my day started. And I had such a better day for it. Now, what would I... And in that, I'm not practicing things for gigs. I'm not practicing things to teach people. I am going, open G sounds pretty cool. Let's go down that rabbit hole for a week. Slide guitar seems pretty good. At that time, it was classical guitar. I taught myself because I was actually making money as a guitarist and couldn't read sheet music. So I went down that rabbit hole and I spent a good sort of 6 months doing the classical stuff, and I still can do all that. But as you get more advanced as a guitarist, you don't go, right, I need to practice spider exercise for 10 minutes. I need to practice my chords, and I need to have this well-rounded, perfect routine. You start looking at things like case studies.
Yes.
And going, okay, that very niche part of guitar looks really cool. I want to learn more of that. And it might be learning half a dozen Rolling Stones songs to really get into Keith Richards' head. I don't know. I don't think you want to be in there.
No.
But just for an example.
You mentioned the technical practice.
Yes.
And case studies. I like to use case studies with pretty much every bit of my tuition that I give. So let's say you're looking at Ghost Notes or Dead, something like that. Pour Some Sugar on Me, Def Leppard. Mm-hmm. It's littered with them. I always like to learn a technique with the song where applicable. But as you said, it depends where you are in your playing career. If you want to play Take It Easy just because, that's your Saturday morning.
That's your practice,
covered.
Isn't it? But once you've got it, it should be demoted to repertoire. Now, I say demoted, and I'm not saying it's negative at all. You should have a pile. It's like that sort of tray in the office of in and out, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the stuff that's hard and's kicking your backside, you want to get in there first and maybe do that for 20 minutes, but do a good 20 minutes and then go on to go, right, okay, I've sort of earned I've earned a little bit of, I've done the hard stuff. I've done the stuff that's going to make me a better guitar player. Now it's about how do I keep at that level?
Yes, you got to, it's maintaining it. I've, especially younger learners will play Paint It Black, for example, in September. Come March, they've never played it before.
I've forgotten it. Spotify playlists are so powerful for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, this is going to tie into one of our Pick Our Brains questions later on, and I've got some thoughts involving Post-it notes and that kind of thing. So we'll swing back round to guitar practice.
Yeah, fab.
If that works for you. So hopefully we're giving you a little bit.
Stick around.
A little bit of that. Okay. So we're going to go neck deep, George.
We are.
What are we talking about in the neck deep segment?
So our neck deep this week, I'll let the cat out of the bag. Every week we've tried to have a different guitar in every episode.
Oh no, you've told him.
I have told them. I find it hilarious. We both sit and chuckle in here as we go and what should we bring this next week. But this week it's kind of appropriate because we have two very different styles of guitars. They're not Strats or Tellys or Les Pauls. This, if you don't mind me starting, is on loan from my brother. So thank you, Johnny, who's a bass player. So we've got some bass relevance in this podcast. This is what they call a Silvertone. Now, back in the 1950s, a company called Danelectro, an American company, started building guitars that look like this, a bit peculiar. So you have to remember, back in the late 50s, early 60s, a Strat was gold dust. It was unicorn droppings.
Very, very expensive.
Expensive, yeah. The fact that 21-year-old Buddy Holly got hold of one is ridiculous.
Just to sort of, because you hear about these people that have these vintage instruments, and you know, my parents bought it me when I was 18, and it's a Gibson SG from 1962. You could buy a car. You could buy a new car for what some of those guitars cost. So it was a really big deal for people to be, as teenagers, like we were talking about in the Fender Friday in the group. Yes. I've got a Strat, which, have I had the yellow Strat on set yet? I haven't.
No, you haven't, no.
Right, okay, so it's coming up in a coming episode. All my family chipped in and bought that for me for my 18th birthday, and it was still second-hand. Granted, it was expensive,
yeah,
but it wasn't buying an 18-year-old a car expensive. So there were a lot of guitars what sort of fall under this catalogue guitar idea, which, you know, like you had Sears and Roebuck in America, it's like Argos and Woolworths, I think is a better thing, you know. These were sold as like catalogue guitars, but actually it's the kind of guitars that most people grew up playing. They didn't all be playing Gibsons, and
they became more mainstream.
Fenders. Sorry, George.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So yeah, Danelectro made guitars that look similar to this. It is. Thing is, when you think of a Strat, you don't think of a 50s design, but because they've just kept it throughout. But that Fender have updated their stuff over the years. These Danelectros and get it out of the way. Silvertone is, think of your Squire to your Fender. Silvertone is the more budget version. This is, I'm guessing, about 150 to 200 pounds worth, whereas the Danelectro is about 300, 350. But then you get companies like Gretsch as well. I view these a bit like Morgan, the car company. Right. They keep making cars that look the same as they did 50, 60 years ago. But then you can think about that for all guitars. But then people keep buying them. But then when Harley Benson have just brought out a new modern HSS Strat Modern series, and everyone's gone, ugh, because the scratch plate's like, it's a Strat body, but the scratch plate extends a bit further than it usually would, and the pickups are slightly on an angle. And everyone's gone, ugh, because if you break tradition, people hate it.
Yeah.
But in terms of our neck deep, going around in circles, this guitar has what we call lipstick pickups. You can get these on Strats as well, but lipstick pickups were actually brought out by Danelectro back in the 50s. It was their design, and essentially it's a single coil pickup that's entirely encased in a nickel coating or chrome. This will be chrome, but back then it would have been nickel.
And is the lipstick reference to almost like a case of lipstick?
Yeah.
It comes apart.
Visual design.
It comes apart to get in it. You do pull it into two pieces to get into it, right? Okay.
And the interesting thing about this, if I want to adjust these pickups, i.e. the pickup height, you do it from the back of the guitar, from the back of the instrument. So they're on springs. Like with if you imagine a Strat pickup, if you want to raise the height, it's on a Phillips screw with a spring. You do that from the back of the instrument to adjust the pickup height.
Wow. Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah.
There's a school day at Kirklees Guitar School.
But sound-wise, whether you're watching or listening, this is very 50s. It's very bright. Now, this is a really light guitar. Not because of the budget element, it is just a light instrument. But out unplugged, it's very resonant. Which doesn't matter if you've got a heavy guitar or a light guitar. They always say the sound of a good guitar is, does it sound nice unplugged? Yeah. But this plugged in, I've got quite a swampy tone on today. It's very Deltones kind of thing. Now, I was saying to James earlier before we started filming, the bridge pickup, which you'd associate with jangly sounds, sort of sharper, see episode 1 for more details, isn't very powerful on this guitar. It does crunch up a bit, but I wouldn't use it for my lead tones on this, but I don't think that's what this is for. This is an archetypal rhythm guitar in my book.
And I also think it's a no-frills, low cost to make, low barrier to end, and that's not me being
No.
rude. That's a cheap guitar
It's
to
a good-
make. Is a cheap guitar to sell
Yeah.
for people that don't want to spend thousands.
It's honestly, for the price that my brother paid for this, it's fine. I put a set of strings on it for him and treated the neck with some lemon oil. But overall, it's very light. It's a nice finish, actually. It's quite a modern finish for these. You've got this kind of silver black burst, and it's all silver on the back. It's all
You say
laminated.
quite modern, but actually Gibson issued that in the Norlin era. It was late 70s.
Right.
Yeah, if you find a Les Paul from the 70s in silver burst and it's a custom, buy it. They're worth a lot of money.
Nice.
Yeah.
But in terms of tradition, the Jazzmaster really does it for me, visually at least.
Yeah. Now, how long have I had this one?
5 minutes comparatively to
No, I've
others.
had this one quite a while. I don't think I've had it a year.
About September time. It's now March.
So I had a Jaguar years ago, a Squire vintage modified Jaguar in surf green, and I absolutely loved it. But these are called offset guitars. They're sort of Fender Jaguar, Jazzmaster, Mustang. Duosonic. What's the other one called? The Bronco. Basically anything that's not a Strat or a Tele.
The Starcasters drop in and out of offset every now and again,
Yeah,
don't they?
and they're kind of their own thing, aren't they? They're sort of somewhere, but they sort of have the Tele Deluxe thing, don't they? But yeah, so I think it's 1958, I want to say. 1958 they came out. So it came out after the Strat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Jazzmaster because Leo Fender intended it for jazz guitar players to use. No jazz guitar players liked it.
No, they play a Gretsch or something.
But the surf guys absolutely loved it.
Look at the Beach Boys.
Yeah, all that sort of... And it's got this kind of twang and jangliness. And it's got the tremolo on it that's a little bit different. So the way a Jazzmaster's, it's got two very, very, very big single coil pickups. They're often mistaken for humbuckers. They're not. They're just like a Strat pickup.
Or P90s.
Yeah,
They
you
look
could say they're like a
them,
P90 out there. But, and no doubt, again, people on Reddit going to get cross with us.
Hello.
It's somewhere between a Strat and a Les Paul. But they're still buzz and pop and fart and crackle like Strat pickups and Tele pickups do. But I find they're a little bit...
Very mellow.
That's both pickups together. Whereas if I just use the neck pickup... I use the bridge pickup.
You're really having to bring it back.
Which they all have
Has
their
its
own
uses.
merits. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's on what they call the lead circuit. Now, you've got these funny little switches up here. This is called the rhythm circuit, and this was the idea was for the jazz kind of motion. You've got a treble and a tone, and essentially it bypasses all that side. So in theory, the idea was that you'd have a sort of jazzy... And it gets that sort of mellow tone. Then you flick a switch...
And you got your lead tone
for your
there.
solo bit. You know, we've discussed this with Les Pauls before, haven't we, using the pickup selector.
Yes.
It's like Fender's equivalent of that. Now, these were absolutely loved by the surf community and those kind of guys. Anything that's 60s and jangly, this is the go-to guitar, and that's why I bought the guitar. Also, they kind of have a resurgence every sort of like
I was going to say,
15 to 20 years.
These two guitars now are more common on the indie circuit, arguably. Alex Turner is
I was
often
just
seen
gonna
with
say
a
Arctic
Jazzmaster.
Monkeys, yeah.
Yeah, so lead like guitar player, the Arctic
But
Monkeys.
you think 20 years before that, or arguably even more, you know, you had the whole grunge thing. Yeah, it's like 14 years before now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kurt Cobain famously played Jaguars and Mustangs. I don't think I ever saw him with the Jazzmaster. Sonic Youth, absolutely love all that. But even like the Smiths and Johnny Marr.
Yeah.
And there's a great book called Marr's Guitars. Have you ever?
I've seen it about,
I've got a copy. I'll lend it
Okay,
to
I'll
you.
have a
It's
look.
absolutely like somebody has gone in and photographed all of Johnny Marr's collection of guitars, and it's like it's breathtaking. some of the beautiful guitars that he's amassed in his collection. That Pedal Show did an interview with him around it as well, which kind of ties into the launch of the book. It's really, really interesting.
But
so
these sorts of guitars tie into the sort of the whole Smiths thing that we keep saying it, but that adjective, but jangly.
Yeah,
That's what with the whole. It's in there somewhere.
I'm going to say
all of that.
It's got that sort of yeah. I don't think I'd ever have one as my main guitar. Right. I use this on the circuit for the theatre gigs that I've got at the minute. This is used quite a lot because it's also great at that sort of Motown. I was talking about with the student last week about the ice pick guitar sound.
Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
I've heard it. I haven't looked into it for a long time, but yeah, go on.
Okay, so the ice pick idea is in Motown they had. So Motown was not only a record label, but it was actually a recording studio with musicians on the books. Now Motown had 3 guitar players that played on most of those Motown records. Okay, let's think about something like My Girl by The Temptations. Yeah. There's 3 guitar parts layered on top of each other. There, you've got the bit that everybody knows. Then you'd have a guitar player strumming it. Yeah, C to F.
Yeah.
So that's the 2 guitars. And then you'd have one called the ice pick. Now, I'm not going to go too shrill in the room because I don't want to deafen us listeners. So I'm going to stay on the middle pickup. But at a gig, I would turn it to the bridge pickup. I'm going to play a C and an F, but I'm going to stab on beat 2 and 4 and follow the snare drum.
I know where you're going.
The sound is really shrill. Can you just play that chord progression for me? We'll try it together. But you get that idea.
Yeah, Love Really Hurts Without You, Billy Ocean.
Oh, it's full of...
Stuck in the Middle with You, Steelers Wheel. There's verse 2, it comes in with a... on that D chord.
And it does that. It does that really well. Now, the reason they called it the ice pick was they had to have the treble so high and it poke out because in those times they only had, I think it's either 3 or 4 things they could record simultaneously, and that was it. So obviously the singer would take one. Yeah. And then all the other instruments have to fight over 3 microphones. So how they'd get the guitar to poke through was having it deafeningly like shrill, but then it'd cut through everything else so that they could save a channel on the mixing desk. Look into Motown; it's really interesting. Just as a business, as a music style, as a point in time, as a working musician, where it was like the Funk Brothers were. It's so sad they got really taken advantage of. They're literally like you'd clock in and out of a factory, they'd clock into this studio. There's a great documentary called Standing in the Shadows of Motown that BBC did in like 2000. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, it's an hour it's well spent.
Whether I've got a student who's into Drowning Pool and stuff like that, or they're into Taylor Swift, chuck them a Motown song, they'll love it. It's just good as a genre. At least.
And it's songs that people know, and as working musicians, we want to play things that people like to listen to.
You say that, I'm playing an 80th in May, and the bill for that has literally been 2 45s of Motown. So we have about, say 40 songs we play in a night, we've got about 10, 15 that are Motown, but they want exclusively. So all the Stevie Wonder's going to come out, and the Supremes, all stuff like that, Fontella.
Excellent. Right, shall we move on to tone talk?
Yeah, so you're wanting an amp. It literally says down here, James' new amp, ?
Right, so...
Your wife doesn't listen to this, does she?
No.
Well,
she knows better. She knows better.
Talk as much as you like about your new amp then.
Right, so I have a problem, and it ties into the practice theme. That's why I put it in there. So I need a new amplifier to practice with. So... for years now, I say years, probably the past 3 or 4 years, I've used a set of the Katana Wazza Air earphones to practice to at home. We have 4 pairs of them at the school, and they work really well for us in the lead classes. I've discovered their Achilles heel. The baby monitors that we have for the children interfere with the Bluetooth.
Ah.
Yes, and... the sound keeps cutting in and out of my earphones, and it's really distracting. It's not like sometimes you get like a little hiss or a little pop,
crackle,
or it might drop signal occasionally. And you can live with it, but it's literally every sort of 15 seconds. It must be some sort of refresh rate or something. I don't know.
Is it latency or something? Yeah.
Do you know, it's only since we've introduced having the second monitor, so I don't know if it's that one specifically or whether there's just too many signals flying around the house. But all that to say, my headphones are really, they're not working for me anymore. Now, it won't be that much longer that we use them, but also I think sometimes a bit of a change is good. And I'm also getting a little bit tired of using headphones so much because I find that my ears are getting really fatigued with it.
So what are you looking for then? Are you looking for a new practice aid?
I want a practice amp, but I want something light, something portable, something that I can get a couple of really good tones at and really low volume, something that I could potentially either via Bluetooth or with an aux cable connect my laptop up to, so that I can practice, and I can practice sort of no louder than the TV would be on downstairs. So I'm not annoying my neighbours, I'm not waking the kids up. And I want something that's not going to look out of place in my living room either.
Got a few suggestions for you.
What I don't want is I don't want to spend my time fanning about with presets.
Gotcha.
Connecting them to apps, things like that. I want to just be able to turn it on, and I can either just dial it in on the panel, clean, rhythm, dirty, reverb, has to have reverb, as we previously discussed with amplifiers. I don't want to have to connect everything. I don't want to have 5 minutes of setup
you just want to
time,
plug in and go.
connecting Bluetooth, messing about one thing or another. I just literally, and I'm not even want it to be wireless. Can I have a guitar lead?
Oh yeah.
You know, what would you buy?
Got 2 suggestions for you.
Right, okay.
And think we've got a Venn diagram now. Imagine, folks, a big Venn diagram. These amps both fall in the middle of that Venn diagram of the two of requirements. Ideally, you want both of them in one. So, what's the first one? Boss Katana Air. Heard of them? It's a Boss Katana, but it's the size of a Bluetooth speaker, size of a toaster. That's getting into kitchens again. Gotta be careful. Yeah, Boss Katana Air. Downside, no reverb. It has delay, but no reverb on the panel, which is so weird. Like, why would you have delay over reverb?
The Black Star flies were like that as well. It must be a cost thing. I don't
Maybe
know.
they are delayed in the world of guitar amps.
I don't know.
Yeah, but on the panel you've got clean, crunch, and lead. So you've got a little toggle switch like on your Jazzmaster. Actually, you just boom up. Bass and treble. It's 5 watts, single 3-inch speaker. Probably, I think they're about 50 to 60 quid.
Okay, so they're not expensive.
I might be wrong with the pricing. I know about the next one because I wrote about it this week for gearnews.com. It's a Spark Positive Grid Go.
Okay.
Now, they're £100.
Are those the little square things? I think Alistair in the Facebook group
They're
has
cylindrical.
one of those. Oh, right.
So again,
I'm
back to the
thinking
Bluetooth
of something
speaker
else.
idea.
Right, okay.
Single input, no control dials on it. It connects to your Spark app. But you plug it in, and if you bring your phone up, it's all there. Now, for £100, again, it's a 5-watt amp. There are loads of 5-watt amps out there, but I'm recommending these two because I know about them. I can't recommend something I haven't experienced. You do have to mess around with the app, but then you have the option to go down that, right, let's have a backing track while I'm playing. Let's have this,
You
that, and the
mentioned
other.
this like AI backing tracks.
I don't know
and
how
all that
they
stuff.
work.
It doesn't really interest me, that.
No, but I think you can load YouTube up on your phone, for instance,
Right.
and then play the video, and you've still got the playback through your amp.
Okay.
Now, these, I think 5 watts is all you're going to be wanting, nothing more.
Yeah, so I've got one of the members of the community is actually going to lend me a Spark amp next week.
We both used to teach an elderly gentleman who loved his Spark. It wasn't one of the tiny ones. It was quite big. So it was really loud for a 25-watt amp.
Yeah.
He lived by that thing.
I'm going to try it. I'm a bit skeptical, but I'm going to try it, and at least I can sort of try it at no cost to myself. Something else I did think of was the, I forget the model name. It's Yamaha make it, THR or something like that.
Is it that vintage-looking one?
Looks like a little toaster.
Yes, it's green with like speaker grills on the back.
They do a couple of different models.
I've seen that, yeah.
But they're quite expensive for what they are. I think they're in the region of 300 quid. So they're quite expensive. Yeah, but
that's
also,
second-hand katana money for a real katana.
Yeah, it is. But also, I ain't got room for a katana. I want something that sits on a shelf out of the way that I can just sort of pack up neatly.
That's why I mentioned that the Spark one. it would sit on underneath your tail. It would sit anywhere and it wouldn't look out of place. And because it's beige, it's
but
brown.
also because the warmer weather's coming, I do spend a lot of time sort of sat out in the garden playing. So it'd be nice to have that portability so that I can sort of take it outside.
You could also. It's more of a novelty product, but you can get one of those mini Marshall stacks. It's the size of your hand.
I had one of those. I had the double stack.
Yeah, you put a 9-volt battery in it, but they just sound awful.
Yeah, and I'm wanting to. It wants to be. It doesn't have to be anything. To be honest, I think actually, come to think of it, one of the original little Roland micro cubes might suffice.
I saw one of them on Facebook Marketplace for $5 the other day.
Right,
but it was in Poole.
Yeah,
and we're in Yorkshire.
Yeah,
and in diesel, my Jag does pretty good MPG, but I'm not going out to Poole for a £5 amp for them not to exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Or for him to say no, you're too far away.
Yes. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend for you.
Okay.
Or you've got a studio full of amps. Lump it.
But I don't. Yeah, but that's the thing is, I want to be able to practice. You know how I said earlier about practicing kind of either before everyone's awake or the opposite. You know, like sort of on an evening after everything's kind of done for the day. And also, I've done that before where I've been sort of lugging big amps around and they sort of become party friendly. But also, children like to mess around with things.
Yeah.
So
there's lots of dials and controls on these katanas.
Well, it's not just that, but it's just the sort of these belong here, these do a job here. You know,
fair dues.
We don't believe it or not. We have a lot of amps and a lot of equipment here, but we're actually
business.
Haven't got enough, have we? You know, we're always kind of shuffling stuff around. So I don't want to add to that problem by taking something home. So right then, I think we should move on to pick our brains. So
audience questions.
I think what we'll do, George, we'll start with question 2 and then we'll circle back to question 1 because that's the practice one.
Okay. So yeah, do you want to ask away? I'll try and do my best.
Okay, so Andrew Hampshire says, I'd love to see/understand how dynamics in strumming patterns can change a simple 3 to 4 chord song and make it a real crowd pleaser when played live.
Ace. Okay, I've got some ideas.
Go on then.
So I gig in a duo most of the time. And let's say there's this aforementioned, I'm trying to think of one, not gigged for a while, so there's nothing coming to mind. In a 4-chord song, if it's the same 4 chords all the way through, you want to build dynamic contrast. Now what that means is loud in some places, quiet in other places. Oh, there's a song we do by the Saturdays, believe it or not.
Wow. Didn't think it would be...
no, up my street. What is it? I can't remember.
I'm such a loser.
Yeah.
It's Girls Aloud.
Girls Aloud, right, okay. But that mostly is G. So for the verse, sorry, who asked this question?
Alex.
So for the verse, I'm going to be playing a G, and I'm going to palm mute.
Andrew.
Alex, whoops. Andrew, I'm going to palm mute. That's where I'm going to... We looked at this the other way. I'm going to rest on the bridge. It's quite a choppy rhythm. Now, can you hear? I've gone nice and quiet now. But then as I build in between sections, I'm going to bring that volume up by taking the palm muting off. And last week we looked at, the other week we looked at quavers as a strumming pattern. Now it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... And that's going to be my chorus. And I love gigging this song for that reason.
As taking it sort of more rock and roll kind of route, something like the Building Seven Nation Army is the G to A.
G to A, yeah.
Or whatever it is. But it's how hard you're hitting the guitar. Really
yeah, you give it some stick.
There's an effect on that.
General rule of thumb, Andrew, is quiet verse, loud chorus. That's your general thing. So if you're playing just a 4-chord song, even Hotel California, there's 1,000 chords in that one last time I counted. First, I'm just normal. But then when you get to the chorus, really let it ring out. But then when I get back to my verse, it gets a bit swampier again. So that's the way I do it at gigs, because if there's just an acoustic guitar and vocal, I've got to be really careful that it doesn't sound the same all the way through the entire song. 4 minutes is going to get a bit boring. Price tag Jessie J, for instance, we gig that a lot. Same thing again. Verse is nice and palm muted. But then my chorus That's what I'm doing there. So loud chorus, quiet verse.
Yeah, hitting the guitar a little bit harder. But think of it, I'd like to think of it the other way, actually. If you're strum normally for your verses, but then strum normally for your choruses, but then subtract for the verses, I think. My advice has always been hit it harder, and I don't get the desired effect out of the student for doing that. So if your verses, we've got a fictitious song that's got a G and a C in it.
Okay.
Yeah? Let's imagine in this song that we've got the G and the C, it's a bar of each, and it doesn't change between the verse and the chorus. My verse might be like this. For the chorus, I'd open that tap up.
Yeah.
Also, accents would be a
Rhythmic,
really good way.
being rhythmic, yeah.
Yeah, so that, we spoke about the ice pick doing beat 2 and beat 4. You know, you could have the...
Yeah.
compared to... You're wanting texture and contrast and trying to not make it monotone.
Another thing I do is using octaves. This is depending on whether your bar chords are good. I do promise I do like 60s and 70s rock, but Murder on the Dance Floor, Sophie Ellis-Bextor, goes down well everywhere.
All the bangers, Jones.
Yeah. That's my verse and my chorus. Problem, verse and chorus, same chord progression. There's a little bit of a reprise where it's... If you think you're getting away, all of that. But then when the chorus comes in, I'll go really funky down here. Without the key change, I think.
So you're suggesting move the same chords but in a different place
position.
on the neck.
Yeah, go to the A string. Octaves are really good. Now, sometimes it's not going to be appropriate. Like, let's use that Hotel California again. It's a B minor to F sharp 7. I'm not going to go... Just doesn't sound right.
But then, so for that, I sort of do a bit more of a sort of, I call it a skank rhythm for the verses.
Yeah. On the offbeat.
But then for the choruses, I'll play the same rhythm, but I'll let it all ring out. So hopefully that answers your question, Andrew.
You've got lots of options.
Dynamics, and just pull it apart and play with it. So we'll go back to we're going back to practice now. So Jesse asked efficient practice schedules and routines, which ties into what we've previously spoken about.
Technical
now,
focus.
If you are, hi Jesse, by the way. Jesse's been posting quite a while. He's got a very impressive Telecaster collection.
Absolutely.
And Blue, his dog, makes a regular appearance.
And some good editing techniques as well.
Is that Jesse's?
Am I getting,
There's
too many members.
I'm not
but
sure.
yeah,
But yeah,
Blue
everyone's posting. Keep posting, guys. It's really cool. So, if you want to get better as a technician, a practice routine is probably the answer if you're that structured kind of person. I'd sort of say, what do you want to improve? Mm-hmm. And no two routines will be the same. It's one of those where it's kind of like you need to zone in on what you're working on. Like I've got a student at the minute that she's just not enjoying the sound that a guitar's making. She can play all the notes. Mm-hmm. She's playing in the right time, worked on timing, worked on how hard we're hitting the guitar. She just doesn't like the way that the guitar's sounding. And I've sort of recently had this revelation that I think she's not spent enough time playing where she's the only guitar player in the mix. So I've recently discovered this thing called Moises AI. Ooh. Yeah, I know, which is not like me at all. And it's an online tool where you put a song in and it can take out certain parts of the music.
Very desirable software.
Well, yeah, but stuff like that has always been rubbish.
Yeah. There's always been something in the back. You can hear the vocal in the background, for instance.
Whereas this is really good. I'm really impressed.
What's it called?
It's called Moises, as in noises, spelt with an M. Moises.
Moises AI.
And the license, I got a deal on it. I think it was like 20 quid for the year, something like that.
I'm not interested anymore. I'm tight.
Well, we'll see if Kirklees Guitar School gets a license for it. You might want to start using it then. But I think pulling the guitar out of the mix for the songs that she's practicing along to is going to be a complete game changer for her. And I think it's half of the battle's figuring out exactly what you need to work on and then literally just doing it. If your picking technique sucks and you're struggling to play things fast enough, something like in Apache, if you're practicing Apache and you can't get that, you need to work on alternate picking.
You don't need Hank playing over the top of you.
Yeah, you've no business strumming along to the chords to that because that's playing, it's not practice, is it? So I want you to really zone in, Jesse, on the things that you want to work on. And I don't go too broad like, I want to work on my rhythm. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Are you falling out of time? If you're falling out of time, you need to work on practicing to a metronome or practicing to a drum track. And you don't even have to tie it to the song that you're getting lost in. If your timing sucks, pick 2 chords with a metronome and do that for 10 minutes every day for a fortnight and you will see progress in it. I think where guitar teachers help guys like you in this scenario is you just need a little bit of help just sort of going really narrow into one very niche thing and fixing that, then moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, because your timing and your rhythm. I teach a bass player called Mark. Hello, Mark. I know you tune in regularly. We've just been doing the bass solo in Run To You by Bryan Adams. Mm-hmm. Now, there's no slap, there's nothing fancy in it. It's just, it's mostly whole beats. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. It's just very sparse, but that's all your right hand techniques.
Yeah.
Dial it back. Like if you're struggling, we spoke about the other week, finding that number 1. Mm-hmm. If you're struggling to do that, because that is your rhythm. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people say rhythm and they mean strumming patterns and gets bigger and bigger. But yeah, just dial it back. Whatever
I had
you're
a
practicing,
conversation yesterday. Sean from the lead group.
Yeah.
Hi, Sean and Jules. They are. We're doing Hotel California for the gig that we've got coming up in the summer, and although we're doing the lead guitar class, I'm still want them playing the rhythm parts to support the other guys in the group. The idea is, so we've got Hotel California, which has two decent solos in it, and then we've got Something to Swing, which has 2 decent solos in it. So we've got Adrian, Bob, Alan, and Sean, and they've
all bases covered.
They've all picked 1 solo each, but the other guys need to
support them.
To prop the other guys up. Now, that means that they need to be strumming the chords underneath 3 of those 4 solos, and I think Sean just had a little bit of a realisation that his timing wasn't as good as he thought it was.
That's the thing. I see that a lot,
But he's been smashing it this week, and I saw him yesterday, and it's loads better. So this is going to change. I know we're going around the houses a little bit here, Jesse, but it's going to change, and you need to identify what you need to work on as a short-term project that you can get over the line within the next fortnight. Then how much time do you want to apply to it? And try not to work on like 6 different things at the same time. Pick something kind of rhythm-based, pick something lead-based, and then I'd much rather that a student spent 15 minutes every day or every other day working on those 2 things. And then if, say they've got an hour to play, they've got 30 minutes to work on repertoire and just play stuff that they want.
Because you've got to have, your practice has got to be enjoyable as well. Mm-hmm. I'm a firm believer that you've got to enjoy what's coming out of your guitar. That's why I like to introduce strumming patterns so early, because it sounds like actual music. It's not just G, 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 G.
Yeah, well, we've spoken about that. There's arguments for both sides of the fence on that, isn't there? Have you got anything to add to that, George?
No, I think you bob on with focusing your lineup, your field of view to one project, because then that's going to help you. Like, just because you're doing the rhythm on Sultans of Swing, which is a bugger, the main rhythm on Sultans of Swing, but you can then apply that elsewhere. You're going to take. It's not like you'll lose it. It's not like you can use it for that one song. You will take that skill and apply it elsewhere, and you'll be a better player because of it. Yeah.
Right then, so what was last week's Riff of the Week?
It was a request to look at my shuffle pattern.
Okay.
So whenever you're demonstrating a lead line, you say, just give me a shuffle in here, George. I'll most likely play that kind of thing. So that was open position. If you want to have a look, tune into last week's episode 6.
Correct.
Did I say it? Yeah.
Right then, so this week, a lesson will have gone out on the YouTube channel before this airs.
Cool.
For I'm a Believer by the Monkees. So if you want this sort of broken down in a little more detail and download the tabs, it's available on the Facebook group. We also have an email list now as well. If you're not on Facebook, head to the second link in the description and you get a weekly email with all the tabs attached to it. And we've had a couple of people reach out and say, I'm not on Facebook and I'm not really interested in this, but I'd quite like the tabs. In exchange for your email address,
versatility.
You can get all that, and it's fair. The thing is, we're not precious about where we send the tabs. It's just I don't want to do it all manually because
You've got better things to do.
Well, and I've just not got the time. Yeah. So anyway, right, we're going to have a look at the intro bit for I'm a Believer by the Monkees, which is traditionally done on an organ, but in most gigs that I play, there isn't an organ there, so I've got to do it. So we've got the, I'm going to break this down into 2 chunks. Yeah, he says. So that's the organ part, and then you've got... So we're going to break that down. So I'm going to start with an open G. I'm then going to play the 3rd fret of the B string and the 1st fret of the high E. And I'm going to play that twice.
And which finger are you using for that?
I'm using my pinky on the 3rd fret and my index finger on the 1st fret, but you could also use your ring finger.
I'm going to go for ring, personally.
Right, okay. You've got that 1st fret on the high E string as well.
Ah, yes, there we go.
At the same time. And then we're going to play like a little C dyad, which is the 1st fret on the B string and then open high E. So you got 2 of those.
Nice. Yeah, that's it.
Right, we're then going to go up to 3rd position. 3rd position means that my index finger is hovering over the 3rd fret. I'm going to play the 3rd fret of the A string, which is a C note, and I'm going to hammer to the 5th fret with my ring finger.
There's a really good podcast on hammer-ons, you know.
There is, yeah. Funny looking man with a beard. So you're going to hammer onto there. Simultaneously, while I'm pressing that 3rd fret, I'm barring the 3rd fret of the string below. So I'm hammering between 3 and 5 on the A string, and then with an upstroke with my plectrum, I pick the D string, which I'm already pressing that 3rd fret down on.
Oh, there's a bit of alternate picking going on.
Yeah. We're going to do that twice. For the 3rd repetition, it's exactly the same, but I'm going to really speed up that hammer on.
Yeah.
Into semiquavers.
Yeah, it goes up from
So if
1
I
and
play
2.
that 3 times, but I just kind of hurry along the hammer on in the 3rd one, the following note after the semiquavers stays the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. And then to finish that off, we're going to do those 2 slower ones again. So you've got 2 slow ones, a fast one, 2 slow ones. And then we're going to finish with the 3rd fret on the A string, which is the C, to finish. I'll pop a link for that in the description, or I'll put a card up if I remember. Yeah, it's just something a little bit different that's not too committal. I like that because it's got the whole sort of surf guitar thing going.
Yes. Love a bit of wipeout.
That kind of thing.
So let's just recap what we've looked at today. Now we're smiling because our Roadcaster, which is brilliant, decided to fill up its memory just before we recap the podcast.
And we thought for a second
we'd lost everything.
So
we haven't. So this is a valuable podcast, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this week we had our introduction, whether things were a rock or a roll. We then went to our technical focus, how to practice the guitar effectively, which tied into our Pick Our Brains. We had a question about dynamics in songs, and we also had a question about practicing the guitar. We had Neck Deep, looking at the Jazzmaster and the Silvertone Danelectro with lipstick pickups and fat single coil pickups. We then had our Riff of the Week, which was the Monkees, I'm a Believer. So, shall we jam to finish, as per?
Yeah. So,
now, I'm just going to throw it out there. If you have anything you'd like us to jam, maybe we could do that. Lawyers, depending.
Yeah.
We could jam something that someone suggests. Another way for you to get involved, perhaps.
Absolutely. So,
I'm feeling
minor.
Yeah, it's a nice key. I'll give you some backing first. See you later, everyone.
Thanks for watching, everybody.